Welcome to Judging 101. My name is Jill Jeran. Today we're going to be talking about the categories of effective opening and closing of shows and of facial expression and character. I've been the director at Carroll High School for 17 years. So the effective opening of a show. What do we look for in the effective opening of a show? Well, I know for me, when I'm creating a show or when I'm judging a show, I'm looking for a hook. So whatever it is that you are trying to get across in your theme, your story, or that entertainment package that you're presenting, what is going to hook me into that story, that theme, or that whole package of songs that you have to present? What's going to help me to understand that from the beginning? What's going to set the scene? What's going to begin to tell me your message at the beginning, and what's going to do it in the best way. So that can be anything from a very energetic, dynamic opening with high energy to something that might be a little bit more suspenseful, a solo, a choral moment. There are all kinds of things that can be impactful, but I think the thing that I look for the most is the impact that that opening is going to have, and that it is meaningful to the rest of the show. So really looking at this as a part of the story, an introduction, if you will. And then when we look at the closer, that our closer is really a bookend to the opener. So whatever I began with, how would I then close that? How would I end it in a meaningful way? Do I need to do something similar to the beginning so that it mirrors that? Or is this an arc of a show where I want to start slow and then I'm kind of climbing the stairway to where we are ending on a super high note? It really depends on, again, your story, your theme, or that package of entertainment that you have. But really looking at what those goals you are working toward are, what the goals that you have are, and then really solidifying that in that last number, and that the message that I have there is completing the story, it's completing the idea, and I have a good handle on that whole package of what you were trying to say. Now, how am I scoring that on the sheet? That's going to be, am I effectively communicating? That's going to potentially a category on our sheet. Was the communication effective? It may be, there may be some work there in transitions, a category there. It may be, there may actually be a category for effective opening and closing. I know for me as a judge, I'm going to make my baseline a 5 out of 10. I feel like if you are on that stage, you are actually already, the work that you have done prior to getting there is starting at a 5, and everything you do beyond that, we're going to build from that, between a 5 and a 10. Potentially using half points in between there, depending on how many groups you have and what kind of nuances that you need to use, or depending on how many categories you have on the sheet. You would want to look at that and see, where you can kind of spread your points out so that you're getting the correct result for what you feel is the fairest way to look at all of those groups. But basically starting at that 5 and going between 5 and 10 seems like a great place to be. Now looking at the character and facial expression, I think we have, most of us have been a part of an audience where we may have seen a group that seemingly does a great job. They have all the smiles, and they're doing everything that they have been told by their director, by those that are working with them, choreographers and whatnot. But there's something that is missing in the performance. And I believe that is really just that believability. Are we believing these students, the performers, to really communicate what their character is and that it's coming out through that facial expression. So really looking at each one of those students, finding out what it is for them to actually be that character and to be able to put that on stage is probably the difference between a good group that's doing all the right things and that great group that really is communicating most effectively. I know one of the things that I have worked on with my students is that within any particular emotion that you are trying to portray, let's say it is a sad emotion, within that sad emotion, changing your facial expression within that sad emotion every 10 seconds is going to be more effective than just sitting with one sad, forlorn face for the whole entire, let's say if it's a ballad, 3 minutes of a ballad. So really choosing what are the emotions that I might touch on during a particular sadness, and fine-tuning what those emotions are, and then how is that expressed on my face. And so finding those moments where we can change up, but really thinking, okay, in general, that we're going to change about every 10 to 15 seconds what our face looks like, and using eyebrows and the mouth and the cheeks and really the whole face to communicate that. And then having that internal motivation to make that happen as well. And how am I scoring that on a sheet? Well, I've already said that before. I'm going to make my baseline at that 5 out of 10. And I think that's a great place to start. And those groups that are like communicating with me to the point where I believe you are the character that you are portraying, I believe you are that person in the 17 minutes that you're on stage. Those people are getting those very upper point levels. The people that, you're doing a nice job, you're presenting yourself in a professional manner, but that is kind of where it stops. It's not going super deep below that level. Then you may want to give those a few less points on that score sheet, and that's kind of where I would make that determination. And so the facial expression and also stage presence, and there may be some in professionalism as well, depending on what's going on within the whole entire show. There may be some points there as well. And then overall effectiveness of the show. Many times there are categories there. So there's usually 3 to 4 categories where you can pull points and go, this is kind of how we're looking at character, and this is how we're looking at the facial expression. The other thing I just want to mention here is that oftentimes we get several different kinds of shows. And so we'll have shows that are maybe a more kind of traditional show where we're coming out and doing 5 or 6 songs that might be or may not be related to each other. It's more of an entertainment package. We have some shows that are theme shows and some shows that may be more story-driven shows. I think it's important that we really try and stick to the same type of grading for each one of those shows. So if we are judging character in a certain way for that entertainment package show, that we're going to apply that same type of criteria to the story-driven show, and that we're not creating a whole separate set of criteria because somebody's bringing a story show and they actually are doing a, maybe a more musical theater type thing, and they have a particular character on stage. And so because there's a character, I'm going to judge that more harshly or more definitively than someone who doesn't maybe have a character. It's just groups and solos, and so I'm not going to judge that as definitively. So I think there's a difference between, I may give more comments to the ones who have more characters, actual characters. But as far as a score, just deciding, where my baseline is, and that I am really giving an even scoring to each one of those groups, and finding out what is my baseline, what is my criteria, what am I thinking about for each of them that would apply to each type of group. Just because we do have so many different styles that hit the stage these days, and we want to be sure that we are being fair in our judging to all of those. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and best of luck with all of your judging this season.